Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the bandana scarf bib, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. One of the great things about this pattern is that it will also teach you how to increase and decrease along the edge in the moss stitch pattern. To make the bandana scarf bib, you will need 1 skein of Red Heart Scrubby Smoothie or Lily Sugar and Cream, a USJ 6mm hook. This one is by Furls. You will also need your standard crochet supplies such as scissors, a tapestry needle, and stitch markers. And for this pattern, you'll also want to have a button or a bit of Velcro, some sewing thread. Coats make sewing thread. If you didn't know that, you can get that right on the Yarnspirations site now too. And while you don't need it, I do love using my Clover desk needle threader to thread my sewing needles to sew on buttons. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the bandana scarf bib. Okay, so what's neat about the bandana scarf bib is that when you fold it up, it makes this great scarf style bib that is double thick, so it absorbs all that drool and other fun stuff the little ones can do. And it's got a button in the back to keep it on. If you prefer, you can use Velcro instead. One note, of course, babies should never be put to bed or left unsupervised with a bib on of any kind. So when you unbutton it, it folds out into this great washcloth type thing, a washcloth, burp cloth, mess cloth, whatever it is. When you've got babies, you need to wipe spills up sometimes in an emergency. You can just pop this open, boom, wipe it up. It's all 100% cotton. Throw it in the wash. When it's clean again, you're on the go. You've got a quick bib you can pull out at dinner time and then unfold to clean up when dinner is over. So let's go ahead and get started making our bandana scarf bibs. Okay, so to begin our bandana scarf bib, we're going to start with a chain of 7. I've got my slip knot on the hook, so I'm just going to go ahead and chain 7 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Straighten out my yarn a little bit there while it's trying to creep up on me. All right, and then when I crochet into my starting chain, I really like to work into this back loop rather than into the top V. I feel, especially with a project like this, it just gives a little bit better finished edge. But if you prefer, you can work into the top V or just the back loop or front loop. It's really up to you. So to begin row 1, now that I've chained 7, I'm going to skip the 2 chains closest to the hook and single crochet in the chain after that. There we are. Then I chain 1 and skip the next stitch. And that's the first one of our repeats. I'm going to do that again. Single crochet in the next stitch, chain 1, and skip the next stitch. That brings us to the very last chain available, and in that last chain, we are going to work a single crochet, followed by a chain 1 and another single crochet. There we are, like so. Then at the end of row 1, that means we should have a total of 4 single crochets made. So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, one thing that I do recommend with this pattern is that you put a stitch marker, I'm going to put that down to the side here where it won't roll away. Put a stitch marker right in the chain 2 or chain 3 that will begin each row. So when we began row 1 here, remember we skipped those first 2 chains. It can be helpful to go ahead and put a stitch marker right in those 2 chains that you skipped there. You'll see how that works out here in coming rows, but putting that stitch marker right in that first space just makes it so much easier to work each following row. So to begin row 2, we're going to start with a chain of 3. 1, 2, 3. And then this is where I would go ahead and put in that stitch marker. So let me grab another one here. I'll just put that right around that whole chain of 3 to make sure it's marked right where I can find it when I come back. Then I'm going to skip the next stitch, so that's that first single crochet right there. We're going to single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Remember we had a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, so we need to find that chain 1 right in between. And we don't work into the chain 1 itself, but we just go into the space right underneath it for our first single crochet for row 2. Then we chain 1 and skip the next single crochet. Single crochet in the next chain 1 space, right there. Chain 1, skip the next single crochet in the next chain 1 space. Chain 1 again, skip the next single crochet, And that leaves us here with that chain 2 that we skipped at the very beginning of row 1. So in that chain 2 space, we want to work our single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. And that's our increase there at the end of each one of these rows. So now I can pull that stitch marker out. We've worked into that space and we're ready for row 3. Rows 3 through 28, or as long as you want to keep increasing in the moss stitch, are all going to be exactly the same, just like this. We're going to start with a chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Put our stitch marker right around that whole chain 3 so it's easy to find when we come back. Then we'll turn here to go back the other way. Single crochet right in that chain 1 space from our increase of the previous row, like so. Chain 1, skip the next single crochet in the next chain 1 space, all the way across there till we get to that last marked chain space. So single crochet in the chain 1 space, chain 1, single crochet in the next chain 1 space, chain 1. All we've got left now, we've got all our chain 1s crocheted into. We've got that chain 3 that we marked at the beginning. So in that chain 3 is where we work our single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, like so. So let's do that one more time together here. Just like row 3, row 4 is going to be completely identical. We start with a chain of 3, 1, 2, 3. Mark that chain 3. Let me turn, get that back on the hook there. Find that first chain 1 space right in between those 2 single crochets. And you can put a stitch marker in there too if you're having trouble finding that. And work a single crochet. Then we chain 1, skip over the next single crochet in the next chain 1 space, like that. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain space. Chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain space. We just keep doing that all the way across until we get to that final chain 3. So we've got one more stitch there, so we're going to chain 1, skip that stitch. Now we've got that chain 3. That's where we work our single crochet, chain 1, and single crochet, like so. So if you look at our tiny little swatch here, just beginning our bib, you can see it is growing on the sides here. It is getting wider. And with every one of these rows, we've added another single crochet. So in the first row, we only had 4. In the second row, we had 5, 6, 7, on through, so that by the time you've made 28 rows, you would have a total of 31 single crochets, all making this really wide triangle. So after you've reached row 28, then on row 29, we're going to make our button loop. So I'll add a couple more rows here, and then we'll work row 29 together. Okay, so if you've worked through row 28, your swatch is going to be a lot bigger than mine, but for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and pretend it's time for me to make round 29. Row 29 is where we work across and get ready to start decreasing, and also where we make our button loop. So here at the beginning, we're going to start again with a chain of 3, just as we did before. 1, 2, 3. And we're going to go ahead, and put our stitch marker right around that chain 3. And then we will skip the next single crochet and single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So far, everything is exactly the same as before. So we just work our way across, chain 1, skip the stitch, single crochet in each chain 1 space until we get all the way to the end here. Pull up a little bit more yarn. So you'll have a few more of these stitches to make here than I do on my little swatch. This is more of a almost American Girl size, if it's even that big. Might fit a Barbie or something like that. But you get the idea. So when you come here close to the end of row 29, you don't want to forget to add that last chain 1 and skip that last single crochet. And then there in the chain 3 space, we are now going to work a single crochet. And then without chaining first, we're going to work a half double crochet, like so. There we are. Then we are going to go ahead and make our button loop. Now for this pattern, I recommended a 3/4 inch sized button, and that's why I chained 6. That's what fits around this button. But if you've used a different sized button, you will need to adjust the length of your loop. And it's always a good idea to try it on too, because everybody does have just a slightly different gauge. So let's see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, one more. So if I hold that down here, you can see that's the right size for my button to slip through, but you'll want to adjust it for yours. After you've chained 6, we're going to turn this way as if to come back, and we're going to work a slip stitch right in that very first chain we made, the one right there at the tip. We'll just go right under those top 2 loops and make a slip stitch. Don't worry if this seems a little flimsy right now. We are going to be single crocheting around that loop as we make our edging. So after that, we're ready to begin row 30. Okay, so to begin row 30, we're going to chain 2, and then we're going to skip over that single crochet and half double crochet and single crochet right in that next chain 1 space, like so. So here I'll go ahead and put my stitch marker in that chain 2. There we are. Then after I put up a little bit more yarn here, I'll be able to work my way across just as we did before. We chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So for now, it's exactly the same. All our increasing has happened on the edges, and for this, all our decreasing will happen along the edges as well. So in the middle of the piece, you just zip right along as you normally would for moss stitch. It's one of the things I really enjoy about this pattern. It's a great one to relax with. It's very meditative, I think. What you want to look for in row 30 and our decrease rows is when you get down to having just 2 chain spaces left. So you'll have the marked one and the chain space right before it. So as you approach those, make sure you chain 1 and skip the next single crochet. Then we are going to single crochet in that chain space. And then instead of chaining 1 and jumping over and working our stitches here, we are going to not chain 1, just immediately single crochet right in that chain 3 space, like so. So we'll go ahead and take that stitch marker out, and then we'll be ready to begin row 31. Okay, so rows 31 through 57 are going to be exactly the same. Now we're just doing our decreases. We're going to start with a chain 2, and I'll put my stitch marker right in that. The chain 2 is a little bit trickier to find than the chain 3, so using the stitch marker here is a particularly good idea. Then I'm going to single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So that means I'm going to skip both of those single crochets that I worked there at the end and come to the next chain 1 space and single crochet there. Then I'm going to just work my way all the way across until those last 2 stitches remain. There we are. So just as before, single crochet, chain 1, skip 1, all the way across until you get to the last 2 stitches. So we are almost there because I've got my little swatch. Let's see here. Yep, we've got 2 stitches remaining. So you can see here's a single crochet, there's a single crochet, and over here marked, that's just my chain 2 space. So we don't want to count that. So what we're going to do is we've got our chain 1 to skip over this one. We'll single crochet in the second to last chain space, and then immediately single crochet in that chain 2 space. Remember, we don't work a chain 1 in between those 2 stitches. So we can pull our stitch marker out of there and turn and do it again. So let's do that together. We're going to chain 2, put our stitch marker in that space, turn, skip over those first 2 stitches, so that single crochet and that single crochet there, and work a single crochet right in that first chain 1 space. Then work our way all the way across until we get to those last 2 stitches again. So I've come to those last 2 stitches. Remember, we've got a single crochet, a second single crochet, and then that chain 2 space there. So we're just going to single crochet in the next chain 1 space, and then immediately single crochet in that chain 2 space. So if I pull up my loop here, you can see we are now decreasing, whereas before we were getting bigger, now we're getting smaller. So you just want to repeat that row 31, 32, all the way through row 57. And at the end of row 57, you should have 4 single crochets across, just like we did in row 1. So keep on decreasing, and we'll come back for the edging and finishing. Okay, so here you can see I've worked my little swatch down to where I have 4 single crochets in the last row. So we've got that chain 2 right there, then 1, 2, and 3 and 4 right next to each other, just as we've been doing for the rest of our decrease rows. Now, as you can see, this actually creates a really beautiful sort of eyelet pattern along the side naturally. However, we are going to use that eyelet to make working our border even easier than usual. So to make the edging, what we're going to do is we don't want to turn after row 57. I finished my last stitch, so I'm not going to flip it over again. I'm just going to go ahead and start working the edging from this side. So what I want to do now is chain 1, and then I am going to single crochet in the same chain 2 space as my last stitch. So right back in there. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and mark that stitch so I know exactly where my edging began. Then I am going to chain 1, skip the next row, and single crochet in the next chain 1 space. So if you look at it, you can see where those spaces are, those big chain spaces. We're just going to skip over the rows and just single crochet right in those, even though we're making the edging now. It just creates a really, oops, that's coming undone. It just creates a really clean look. So we're going to keep doing this all the way across here until we start coming up to this chain 6 loop. So we're almost there. So we'll chain 1. We've got, looks like one more eyelet right there. So we'll just go ahead and work our single crochet in there. And now we're at that chain 6 loop. In that chain 6 loop, I want you to work 8 single crochets or however many fill up the loop for the size you've made. So just work right into the chain space there, right in the middle of the loop. And this is going to give our loop a lot more stability and just make it easier to use. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you find, 7 looks better or 9, it doesn't really matter on the number here. It's just a matter of, like I said, making a really nice, stable, solid loop. So you do want those stitches sort of close together, but you also don't want to make it so tight that it doesn't fit around your button anymore. So it's always a good idea to stop and check and make sure, yep, that's still the right size. All right, so when we have finished working around our chain 6 loop, or however many chains you need, then it's time to start working down the side of our cloth again. So we're going to start by working a single crochet in the side of the next row. I like to sort of split this stitch and go under the 2 loops or 2 pieces of yarn there along the side. Then we're going to immediately single crochet in the next chain space. And then we are back on track. We can chain 1, skip the next row, and single crochet in the next chain space. My tail wanted to come up and join the party there. So just keep working all the way across until yep, there's that tail trying to pop up on me again. I don't normally weave the tails until the very end, but this one really wants to get in the way. There we go. So we'll keep on doing that until we reach our row 1, the first row we actually started with here. Then when we get there, we are going to go ahead and work a single crochet right in the side of that row. Then we are going to chain 1 and single crochet in the next chain space twice. So if we look at this first row we made, it's upside down right now. But if you'll remember, we skipped over those chains. So that is essentially now the chain space that we want to work into. So we've got our chain 1. We're going to go into that chain space, chain 1 again, go into that chain space, like so. And there we're across that last row. So then we are going to go ahead and repeat our usual plan. Chain 1, skip the next row, single crochet in that next little eyelet space there, that next chain space. Chain 1, skip the next row, single crochet in the next space, all the way up until we get to this corner here. So you'll know it when you see it here. This is going to be that corner row 29 where we had our chain 3 there opposite our chain 6 loop. So in that loop, in that chain space right there at the corner, we're going to go ahead and work 2 single crochets right in that corner. Now, if you find that your stitches are getting a little tight and it wants to bow up, you can try and concentrate on making those chains a little bit looser if you find it's really tight, or just give it a good tug with a little bit of blocking. Cotton really likes to form fit, and you can see it's straightened right out. So if you find it starting to get a little tight, give it a little tug first and see if it just didn't need to have the stitches sort of adjusted, sort of almost like hand blocked a little bit there. So we've got 2 single crochets in that one to get us around our corner, and then we can just continue again. Chain 1, skip the next row, find that next chain space there, chain 1, skip the next row, find our next chain space, and continue that all the way until you get back to that very first row. We're going to go ahead and chain 1 and single crochet right, oops, that's the side of the row. I want to go ahead and single crochet right in that marked chain 2 there, like so. And then I can go ahead and take that stitch marker out. I will chain 1 again, and I'm just going to go ahead and work right across our last row, or you could join at this point. It's essentially the same stitches over again. But we'll go ahead and finish our edging by working all the way around until we get to that marked stitch right there. You can see here, those 2 stitches are worked together. So however you want to handle that, it's kind of up to you. It's pretty much just for looks at this point. It's an edging. So you can work right into the top of that single crochet if you want to, and then join there. I think what I like to do here is skip over both of those, work into that sort of chain 1, not the stitch itself, but there it is, the chain 1 that I did when I started the very beginning of the edging round. But then you want to go ahead and break your yarn, pull that through, and then you can invisible join to the chain 1 at the start of the edging round. So remember, that's the stitch we marked right at the beginning here. Go ahead and take that out, and I'm just going to go ahead and finish off with my invisible join. There is a separate video tutorial for this linked at the link in the description, like so. So like I said, going around that last round is, it's the same stitch pattern essentially. So it's up to you whether you want to just go ahead and stop there and join. But I like to work all the way around just to give it a really finished look. After you've got your all your crocheting done, then all that's left to do is, of course, weave in the ends and sew on our button. Okay, so here I've got the full-sized bandana scarf bib. You can see here's our chain 6 loop. You can see we've kind of got that wide start here. So we've got that soft curve with our 4 stitches at the bottom at the top. And opposite, the corner opposite the loop, is where you want to sew on your button if that's what you're using. So basically it's just sewing on a button. But while I'm here, I wanted to show you this really cool tool in action. This is the Clover Desk Needle Threader. And this is for use with sewing needles. Now, sewing needles are different from tapestry or yarn needles, not just in the size, but in the shape of the hole. A tapestry yarn needle or an embroidery needle, like you see here, typically has this long eye, this wide opening, whereas a sewing needle, if you can even see it on here, let's see, I have trouble seeing it even just with my bare eyes here sometimes, it has a very small round hole. So with the desk needle threader, you can thread this needle a lot easier than trying to thread it by hand. Threading a yarn needle can be tricky enough. Threading one of these can be really frustrating. So what I like to do is use this desk needle threader. You drop it eye down, so the whole side down into the space labeled 1, or on some of them it's actually labeled needle hole or something along those lines. And then we're going to take our thread. Again, this thread is by Coats. And then rather than trying to get it through that tiny eye of the needle, I'm going to put this, I'm just going to go ahead and put this right on our swatch so it's a little bit easier to see against the white. I've got my white thread. I'm just going to put it right in the slot right next to our needle, like so. And then I hold the end down. I can just do it by holding right on the needle threader. But I don't want to hold both of them. I don't want it to be tight. I want it to be able to move. So just hold this end down and then just go ahead and push down on that little lever right there, mark number 2. And then I need to very carefully pull this needle right back out. And I hope you can see, I'm going to try and do it without accidentally pulling it back out. There is the tiniest loop of thread there pulled right through the eye of the needle. So now all I need to do is grab that loop, pull it on through, and the needle is threaded. Could not be easier. I am absolutely in love with this project, and I no longer feel like I have to avoid sewing on buttons. Couldn't be happier with it. So if you get frustrated sewing on buttons on your projects, I definitely recommend picking up one of these as well. And that's how to crochet the bandana scarf bib and how to increase and decrease with the moss stitch. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you'll give the moss stitch a try, if not this pattern. It's a really fun stitch pattern to use for lots of different projects. Again, you can get this free pattern as well as the links to all the video tutorials and other tutorials that I've mentioned here today and all the materials you've seen me use here today right at the link in the description, or go to mooglyblog.com and search for Bandana Scarf Bib. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and have a great day, everybody.